We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Footballs. Peek around the corner with your host, Greg Flugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our ever-growing channel. Smash the like button. Smash it right now if you like our content. Share the video with your family and your friends. If you want to support this channel through a super chat donation, hit the $, put a comment, and put it up on the screen. We'll get to it as soon as possible. Welcome into the studio that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway in Kurt Gowdy Avenue. PATC community, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be a legend with your comments in the chat and with your phone calls later in the show. Welcome in, everybody. I'm happy that you have come into the studio along with me. It's an emergency live show. Emergency live show, ESPN, Pete Thamel, breaking news, Florida State in discussions, in-depth discussions about their long-term future. It's a short article. We're going to be going through it. If you've been with us here at Peek Around the Corner, if you've been going into the Holy Smokes Theater, we just did that yesterday. And if you've been with us here the last few months or since we've started this channel, but since December 26, 2022, when the Florida State Money Perch told us, and we reported to you all that Florida State was going to make some public noise in 2 months, and on February 24th, they did it. He also said the first quarter of 2024 is going to be the quarter that Florida State puts their flag, puts their spear into the ground, and declares their intentions. The story is going to move forward in the first quarter 2024. We have been saying this since December 26, 2022. This article is short, and I already have some people on Twitter saying it's not a whole lot of difference there. I mean, it doesn't really give us some more information. It doesn't, but it can, look, it confirms some stuff. It confirms everything that I've been reporting to you. But we're going to add on to it here at Peek Around the Corner. We're going to add on to this short little article. First of all, this is not just about Florida State. I know the article is about Florida State, but it's not just about Florida State. Yesterday in our Holy Smokes Theater, Clemson is active. Florida State is active. They've been active. We'll get to it. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming on in at the start of the show, an emergency PATC live show. Pete Thamel, ESPN, breaking news, Florida State in discussions about their future. We're going to push the envelope tonight even more. There's one part of the ESPN article that we have a different take on here. And I know you're saying the fat guy from Minnesota, you should not be correcting Pete Thamel. You know what? You're probably correct, but again, we do disagree on one part of this article. And we're going to expand on it here in this show tonight. First of all, let me thank everybody for coming on in. I know a lot of people in the chat don't even know what I'm talking about. Or they haven't read the article, or they don't have ESPN Plus, whatever. It's okay. We're going to go through it together. There's a link in the description. You can read the whole thing after the live show. After the live show, early peak member MBM is in the house. Hagen is in the house. Tim Bales is in the house. Early peak member Stephen McNeely is in the house. We are live. Michael Uten, good evening, all is in the house. Randy Taylor, ho, ho, ho. PATC community. Ted Evans, Mr. Husky. Early peak member is in the house. We are live. We are live. The Terrapins in the house. JD Turtle, thank you for coming on in. Bring it on, Godfather John Grove. Hey, hey, ho, ho. PATC community ready to go. Lee is in the house. Ooh, Black Rain is in the house. Ryan Matson, Skyuma, Curtis Brown is in the house. Daniel Montecastle, Mr. Hoosier. Indiana's getting a whole lot of good news lately. A whole lot of good news when it comes to the football program. Charlie Atwood, Penn Stater Charlie Atwood is here. He is here. Our Webb is in the house. Randy Taylor, Nick Flynn, David B. is in the house. Gerald McNeely is in the house. Daniel Tuffy Duffy, Go Blue, beat the Tide. Tuffy Duffy, I sang Hail to the Victor on yesterday's live show. I don't think Gerald McKinley was in the house. I don't think Tuffy Duffy was in the house. But go back to the live show yesterday. I think it was about midway through. I sang Hail to the Victor. Hopefully I haven't iced the Wolverines from a chance of winning it all. Mick Stevens is in the house. Ryan Willie, early peak evil badger is in the house. Thanks for y'all coming on in. I appreciate it. Let's get right to it because this is an emergency live show. I know you all are very busy in your own lives. You have no time for the fat guy of Minnesota. But we're gonna get to this. This is important. Breaking news. Pete Thamel, FSU in discussions about their future. Why was this broken? Why was this put out there tonight? Again, when we go through the article, It's going to, well, it's going to confirm what you all know, what we have been reporting to you. Sources: Florida State discussing future in ACC after the college football playoff snub. We're going to go through this article. I'm going to give you my opinion on it. Then we're going to go through your comments, and then we're going to get to your phone calls as soon as possible. Sources: breaking news. This came out about an hour ago. We got in live as fast as we could. Andrea Edelson, Pete Thamel. Florida State has had renewed in-depth discussions about its long-term future in the ACC in recent weeks. So has Clemson. Sources tell ESPN. Talks that were reignited following the Seminoles' omission from the college football playoff early this month. And let me just hit upon this right now. Let me hit upon this right now. Were they reignited in the sense of passion because the Florida State got snubbed? Did they have maybe a few more phone calls than usual, more discussions about this? Yes, you could say they were reignited. However, and I'm gonna make this clear, even if ESPN did not make it clear. The talks have not stopped. Like, Florida State did not table this discussion. This is something that they just didn't pick up the phone right after they got a playoff snub and say, hey, whoa, we should talk about this again. We should talk about our what conference affiliation are we going to have in 3 years from now? No, that's been going on for a long time. What has Florida State exactly decided? We have not reported that to you because I don't think they know, right? But we've been telling you the first quarter of 2024, they were going to do something more to the story. They were going to declare their intentions. They might not do, we don't even think they're going to do a withdrawal notice, an official one in the first quarter of 2024. But this story is going to get pushed big time in the first quarter of 2024. Florida State has not stopped talking about this. Clemson has not stopped talking about this. They know their values. They know their perceived values, what the networks perceive their value to be if they would enter into a relationship with the SEC or the Big Ten. If you've been with us here at College Football's Peek Around the Corner, you know this. This has not stopped. That's why we have the Holy Smokes Theater. That's why the popcorn line is extremely long. That's why the SEC commissioner's in the theater. That's why the Big Ten commissioner's in the theater. That's why Fox and ESPN is in the theater. We've made these moves in the last month. Go back to the article. The snub, which occurred after the Seminoles completed a perfect 12-0 regular season record before winning the ACC championship game in Charlotte, angered many at the university and among its board of trustees. Essentially, the last straw after a year spent voicing their displeasure with the ACC. I understand. Yeah, I get it. This is the last straw. But this has been in motion for quite a while. Whatever the next step is, however they formulate it, however they plan it out, they're trying to decide on it, but this has been in discussions for months. It did not just happen again in a couple weeks ago. More passion, more phone calls, more anger. Yes, yes, yes. But this has been going on. Clemson's been working. Clemson has been working. Florida State has been working on this. That's why we've been talking about it at Peek Around the Corner. I'm not just here sitting in front of a mic. This is what is going on. There is big time chatter. And now it's starting to come out in public. And more of it's going to come out. And you're going to get a Clemson piece here pretty soon coming out on this. The situation, now get this, buckle up, PATC community, buckle up. The situation is expected to come to a head in the near future and formally discussed soon, sources indicated to ESPN. While there has been a renewed discussion, no board of trustees meeting has been called. We're going to break this down because I know ESPN, I get it, man. I don't write articles, but when I come on here and I have information and I try to give you as much as I can without burning something over here, without burning something over there. But I want to have you have the best information as soon as possible because this is college football's peek around the corner. I almost can see their minds working on this article, this paragraph in particular. The situation is expected to come to a head in the near future. Again, and when we get a little bit further into this short article, I think you're going to get confirmation that it's not about Florida State saying we're out of the ACC a month from now and we're going here. That's not what I don't believe that's what's going to happen, and I don't believe ESPN believes that's what's going to happen, and I think you're going to see that later in the article here. The situation is expected to come to a head in the near future. This situation of what is the next step. Again, the next step. Clemson is not sitting in a row. They are at the center of the stage. Thank you for the super chat, Daniel. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your generosity. Clemson has been with Florida State at the center of the stage for a couple months. Maybe nobody else is reporting that. I'm fine with it, guys. I'm fine with it, gals. I'm perfectly fine with that. Clemson is right with Florida State at the center of the stage. This is not the Big 12 situation where we reported to you for months that Colorado was at the center of the stage. Before all the articles came out, Colorado was at the center of the stage alone. Arizona was at the edge. But in this case, ladies and gentlemen, Clemson is with Florida State. Thank you for the super chat, Daniel. Back to this little paragraph here. The situation expected to come to a head in the near future. I believe Florida State is going to, and we've talked about this, we reported December 26, 2022. That's like 358 days ago. We said the first quarter in 2024. The near future, we believe, is the first quarter in 2024, where Florida State is going to make some very important, massive statement to the ACC. Back to this paragraph. The situation is expected to come to a head in the near future and formally discussed soon. That means, ladies and gentlemen, that means Board of Trustees. A meeting at the Board of Trustees with the chairman of the board. Forget what his name is. I think it's Collins. I may have that name wrong. Formally discussed soon. Out in public, Board of Trustees. Sources have indicated to ESPN. While there has been renewed discussion, no Board of Trustees meeting has been called. So keep an eye on the Board of Trustees. We know, and we've been talking about it here, that the next Board of Trustees meeting at Florida State is January 31st. And that meeting has been scheduled for a year out. And we know, now I might have the wrong date here, But we know the Clemson's next Board of Regents meeting is February 2nd or 3rd or 4th, somewhere in that area. And that has been scheduled for a long, long time. Brett Yormark is watching from the balcony. I can tell you what Brett Yormark is not doing right now. Brett Yormark is not talking about a merger with the ACC. I don't know none of that stuff is happening, ladies and gentlemen, okay? None of that is happening. Back to the real world in this article. While there's been no renewed discussion, no Board of Trustees meeting has been called. To be clear, now focus on this, ladies and gentlemen. To be clear, Florida State is not leaving the ACC in the near term, but merely weighing its options, a difficult task that has also come with trepidation among some involved in the talks. It's a big mountain to climb. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's not going to cost $80 million, $100 million, $120 million. It's going to cost a whole lot more to get a settlement. It's not easy. It brings on risks. This is not about Florida State leaving the AC by the end of the year. It's not about Florida State leaving the ACC in the first quarter of 2024, as we have been reporting to you consistently for 358 days. That's not what this is about. But it doesn't mean there's not going to be a massive story in the first quarter in 2024, because we've been told there will be. Florida State is going to give everybody a light to where we can see what pathway they are taking when it comes to dislodging themselves from the ACC. Back to the article. The Seminoles have not been shy about voicing their displeasure with the growing revenue gap ACC schools face compared to the SEC and the Big Ten schools. The way the ACC distributes revenue and wanting to have a larger share of the television revenue pie based on ratings and marketability. Again, there was some decision made with the ACC where they do have unequal revenue sharing when it comes to part of the playoff distribution money, and it's based upon performance. But none of it was adjusted. None of the unequal revenue was adjusted for larger share of television revenue pie based on ratings and marketability. Right? That did not happen. Florida State did not get what they wanted, and neither did Clemson on this particular point. Now, in my opinion, to me, it doesn't make it wouldn't make much of a difference anyways. But from Florida State's perception, they did not get what they wanted from the ACC, and neither did Clemson. The shifting collegiate landscape over the last 2 years have only exacerbated those concerns as the ACC has fallen further behind the SEC and the Big Ten. Florida State is not the only school that has considered its options. 7 schools, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Miami, Virginia Tech, Virginia, and North Carolina State, had conversations about their long-term futures earlier in the spring. That was coined the Magnificent Seven by Brett Yormark. During the Board of Trustees meeting in August, Florida State President Richard McAuliffe made it clear the school would very seriously consider leaving the league if things did not change. And they really haven't changed. Sure, the ACC has dollied up a little bit of unequal revenue sharing plan but that's not going to fill the revenue gap between Florida State, what the ACC schools get distributed in their Tier 1, Tier 2, and all their media money versus what the SEC and the Big Ten are going to get, plus the fact that the Big Ten and the SEC are going to re-up their media contracts before the ACC does once again. And finally, in the article, any ACC school that wants to leave the conference would have to challenge the grant of rights to be able to get out to join another league. The grant of rights, which runs through 2036, gives, now listen up everybody. Ryan Willie, thank you for the super chat. I think Florida State will let their intentions known within a month after the Natty, and it'll be the Big Ten, and I don't believe that to be the case. But, and I will get back to that point, I don't believe there's going to be any conference named when Florida State makes another public big-time statement. And I'll let you know why I believe that. Ryan Willie, though, thank you so much for your comment, for your super chat. I appreciate it. Now, listen up. The grant of rights, this is in the article. It's on your screen. The grant of rights, which runs through 2036, gives the ACC control over media rights for its member schools, including the broadcast of games in all sports. And this is what I've been reporting to you forever. It's the ACC that has the media rights of all these schools, not ESPN. And I'm not trying to say this to disparage or throw rocks at FSU Florida State insiders. But you've had the story wrong. ESPN does not own Florida State's media rights. The ACC does. You have to satisfy the ACC. You have to beat them in the courts, or you have to satisfy them with a settlement. Not ESPN. ESPN does not own Florida State's media rights. This has been something that has been pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And I've been trying to push back, and ESPN telling you once again. Okay. And finally, in addition, any school that wants to leave the ACC would have to pay an exit fee of 3 times the league's operating budget, or roughly $120 million. Historically, schools have been able to get out of an exit fee paying 60% of what is owed. So maybe, possibly, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina would have to pay maybe $80 million of the $120. But to get a settlement from the ACC, to get out of the ACC, it's going to cost a whole lot more money than that. So let me first get to Ryan Willie's super chat once again here. Thank you so much for the super chat. You know what? Florida State might end up in the Big Ten. They might end up in the SEC. But when they make their next declarative statement, and it's going to be big, and it's going to be in the first quarter of 2024, although ESPN is saying, ooh, it's going to come soon, maybe. I don't think it's going to happen before January 1st, obviously. I think we're going to be correct in the first quarter of 2024. But they're not going to name the Big Ten. There has been a whole lot of indirect talks. People know where they stand. But there have not been any official talks. The Big Ten is not going to get down the brass tacks with Florida State until Florida State has cleared the ACC grant of rights. And again, when I say that, I'm in the minority once again. We believe the SEC is going to be in the same position. Does Florida State know where they stand with the Big Ten? Do they know that the Big Ten's interested? Yes. Does Florida State have a perception of what type of deal, the type of deal they would get for the first few years in the Big Ten? They probably have to come in as a discount, even if they come in 3 years from now. Maybe, possibly, yes. So does Clemson. This is what these schools are working on. when they're thinking about the payout, the settlement to the ACC, when they're thinking about who's going to help them pay that settlement to the ACC, when they think about what they owe and how many years they got to pay back to when it comes to paying out the ACC, they have to have some sort of idea who's interested in us, do we have a landing spot, and how much revenue would we expect the first few years of the remaining SEC and Big Ten current media contract, and what those two conferences are going to get. Highly speculative, but what are they going to get starting 2030? Is this worth it for us? And the answer has been yes, by the way. They believe it's worth it to them, Clemson and Florida State. They get on the moving train earlier, way earlier than 2036, 2030, 2028. Okay, let me get two more comments here real quick. Okay, so that's the article. A few things on the article. One, Pete Thamel, Andre Adelson saying that the Florida State are now having a reignited talks about their future. We agree with that in the aspect of are they so fired up because of the snub of the college football playoffs that they're having more discussions now? Are they fired up? Are they going to schedule something at the Board of Trustees earlier than January 31st? Yes, that's probably so, right? I think we've all been saying it. But have Florida State stopped their internal talks? No way. They have not stopped. They've had the train on the tracks for a while now. They're trying to figure out exactly what they're going to do in that first quarter of 2024. Exactly how are they going to make a statement? What are they going to say? And I think that is decision time. It's go time when it comes to this is the road we're going to take in getting out of the ACC. And we think that's a settlement road eventually. So that was in the article. Reignited talks, internal talks, and they're going to have a formal discussion soon. Let me get back to that. I want to make sure I'm saying it correctly. The situation is expected to come to a head in the near future and formally discussed soon. Sources indicated to ESPN. While there has been a renewed discussion, no Board of Trustees meeting has been called. We are sitting here December 19th. We're going into the holidays. It would be surprising to me if there was a scheduled Board of Trustees before the end of 2023. I would expect it to be shortly into the 2024 calendar. And I don't even think, again, this is some speculation on my part, this Board of Trustees discussion soon, we would not call that the great event of the first quarter of 2024. Like, discussions, again, in the Board of Trustees, in public, but a lot of it in private, an executive session, but then they're going to come out and put their flag into the ground. They're going to let ACC know. They're going to let ACC know their intentions of how they're going to get out of the conference. First quarter 2024. And we've been saying this because of the Florida State money purge. Have been telling us since December of 2022. Patrick, the ACC TV deal keeps the ACC afloat. Jay Baller says the ACC is sunk. Black Rain, ACC is sending out some signals. We're going to open up the phone lines right now. Hold on, everybody. Phone lines are now open. 763-260-1037. 1333, a PATC emergency live show. ESPN now, as we wait for your phone calls, think about this. Why now? Why did Andrea and Pete Thamel, why did they report this now? Why did they report this now? Why? Why tonight? I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. I have my opinion on it. I'm going to wait for you guys to talk about it in the chat or with your phone calls. Why tonight? Why did they sneak this short little article out there tonight saying Florida State has had in-depth discussions? I want to say it, but I want to wait. I want to wait to what you guys think about it. Stephen McNeely, once again, early peak member. And I can't find my, I'm not quite organized tonight. Emergency live show. Stephen McNeely, member for 1 month. Thank you so much for being a member. Greg, how far down the road has Virginia kicked the van on leaving the ACC? I don't think they've kicked it down too much. Not to the extent of, obviously, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina. I don't think they've kicked the can further down than, I think Miami of Florida has kicked the can further down than Virginia. Virginia has its own, as you know, McNeely, Virginia has its own universe. A galaxy in this realignment wave universe. Right now, Virginia and Virginia Tech shares the same sun. It's going to be, that is a big, gigantic story. That we're going to get reports on it. We're going to get articles on it. I don't know how much Virginia can kick the can down the road on this. Of course, that we know that they were part of the Magnificent Seven. Of course, Virginia Tech had to be included in the Magnificent Seven. And I think Virginia Tech's going to have to be included in a lot of what Virginia tries to do here. But again, Virginia is not at the top of the domino. It's North Carolina. But it's also Florida State and Clemson because they are the most willing and able to declare something here in the first quarter of 2024. North Carolina is not politically aligned yet. We'll see what happens. We've been covering that story for days here. But thank you so much for the comment, Steve McNeely. I appreciate it. So why did ESPN put this out in an article? That they've had reignited their in-depth discussions. Why December 19th? Why at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time, 7 o'clock Eastern Time? Why? Why tonight? I'm going to give you a hint. We did a live show yesterday. And it was about something. Peter Collins, thank you. That was the name. Recall that Chairman Peter Collins has repeatedly stated that the gore would not be the element that keeps my nose from taking action. Yes, he did say that. He said that in an interview. Thank you, Rod Nix. Thank you for the great comment. He spoke highly confident that was not going to be the hurdle that keeps him in. Now, we take that either one of two ways, Rod, when Peter Collins said that. One is that they have something, that Florida State has something. some sort of pastime communication with Swofford and the ACC when they sign that extended grant of rights. They have some sort of communication.
Call from
JD.
JD, can you hold on 1 second, sir?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate your call. Thanks for your patience. So, Rod, we think that's one or two ways here, that they have some sort of communications that maybe the ACC did not give enough. They haven't fulfilled their promise considerations to Florida State when Florida State signed that extended rights. That's one possibility. The other possibility is the grant of rights is not going to be the hurdle that keeps them at bay in the ACC, because Florida State has already figured out that that this is going to go to a settlement, that we're going to pay our way out, that the grant of rights is going to be a very expensive price tag, but whatever it is, it's still not going to keep us at bay in the ACC. Great comment, Rod. Appreciate the comment. The question. Now, JD, Mr. Seminole, the floor is yours. I'm asking you. You can talk however you want about this subject, obviously. But I've had a question for the PATC community. I haven't read an answer yet. Why did ESPN put this article out tonight?
To be honest with you, I don't know. I mean, you could say that FSU's floating it out there because National Signing Day is tomorrow, and of course they want to bolster their class. But okay. Matt Baker's been throwing hints out there for the last week or two. Talking, more or less sarcastically throwing reminders out there that, oh, by the way, don't pay any attention to this, but I'm reminding you about this anyway. Yeah. Talking about FSU. Yeah. So, but it's obvious FSU wanted this circulated today because, Pete Thamel, I don't know where he falls in all of this. Andrea Adelson and David Hale are very, very sympathetic to FSU's plight. Very much so. So, what's your opinion? If you're ready to
I'll answer it right now.
Okay. Or before
go
you
ahead. Go ahead. Take the floor, and then I'll give you my answer, and I'll give everybody.
Is it trying to get ahead of what Clemson is saying?
Huh?
Or they want to get?
No, that's not it.
They want to get ahead?
No. They.
Okay.
Nope. That's not it. We don't believe that's it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go. No, I didn't really. Before I called, I really hadn't even given it that much thought about why now, why today, other than just setting the stage before bowl season really kicks in. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay, CFB playoff edits hits on it. Not quite. He just put a comment there. Not quite. Really good comment though. CFB playoff edits. His answer is Florida States are in talks with Fox, NBC, CBS is why ESPN and Thamel put it out today. I don't want to classify it as Canes All Day is also is right there as well. Canes All Day says ESPN is getting ready to play defense, as Pete Thamel puts it in writing. Florida State, Clemson, UNC, Virginia. I wouldn't classify it as Florida State are in talks, because that makes it too official. That makes it too the real rep is. I wouldn't classify it as are in talks, but CFB playoff edits is correct in the sense of, and we talked about in the live show yesterday. And this is why we do it. This is why I had to talk about it. I'm trying to give you all the peek. I'm trying just to stay ahead of what's coming down the chute. And that is Florida State and Clemson have been incredibly active. Our show last night or whatever, yesterday morning, whatever it was. I don't remember from one day to the next. But yesterday's show, it was called Clemson is Active. They are active with, we got the leak from a media company. Okay? Just like the Colorado, we went through this thing last night, right, JD? Yesterday. So,
yes, sir.
So, yes, CFB playoff edicts is correct. It isn't that there's official talks going on. Please don't misunderstand me, people. It isn't like the Big Ten has sat down with Florida State. They haven't. Neither have Clemson. But Clemson and Florida State have gathered us information over and over and over again. Information of their perceived value, how this would work, yada, yada, yada. And ESPN is picking it up. They know this is going on. ESPN knows this is going on. Not in a way that it would, not in a way, Florida State's not doing anything that would get them in trouble. Neither is anybody else. There's third parties talking, right? It isn't like that. But everybody is understanding where they are in the room. These are big, millions, hundreds of $1 million decisions. And before they flip the switch, before they pull the trigger, you better believe Florida State's got to know exactly where they stand. Clemson's got to know exactly where they stand with every corner of CBS, of Fox, of NBC, of ESPN. And the leaks are happening. That's why, in our humble opinion here at Peek Around the Corner, that is why this came out tonight, because it's getting real loud behind the curtain here, real loud. And that's why we've been doing what we've been doing at the Holy Smokes Theater. JD, now the floor is completely yours. Say what's on your mind. Say how you're feeling. I apologize for taking up your time. The floor is absolutely yours.
Well, before I get into and I appreciate that, before I get into the FSU part, I do have a bone to pick with you, though.
Uh-oh.
Die Hard is most definitely a Christmas movie. I'm just sorry.
No, okay. All right.
It just is. It just is.
All right. That's
may not be a Merry Christmas, but hey, it was Christmas, so it still falls in there.
All right.
I've been real busy the last several days. I saw where on War Chant, one of the insiders that has his Big Ten connections, I saw earlier today that he insinuated that it's now FSU's move on what they want to do in their timing. So I took that to mean as though everything's in place for whatever they decide. And that probably lines up with things that you know and things you're hearing behind.
I won't exactly put it in that. The best way I can put it is, I think here soon, first quarter 2024, I think Florida State is going to, they're going to have a flashlight in their hand, and they're going to point, not necessarily at SEC or the Big Ten, but they're going to point to a pathway on how they're going to handle this situation. And that story in itself is going to be massive. I'm going to stop short of everything else besides that as of right now.
And when I say it's FSU's move, in other words, they need to take the leap, is what I'm saying. In other words, FSU has to step forward now, and it's just time, like you just suggested. It's not that, this deal is absolutely done or this other deal is absolutely done. No, it's now FSU's move to proceed forward, and that's where we are. As far as the grant of rights goes, you and I have had discussions before. I think you think we disagree. I don't think we do.
Yeah.
I think it's looking at it from two different perspectives. legalistically, who controls the grant of rights? The ACC. Of course they do. Now, what have they done? They have sold the distribution rights for the ACC to ESPN. Are we in agreement there?
Yep.
Okay. Now, if ESPN fulfills the wiggle room, and this is my opinion, but I think we can see it in practical application. Where's Jim Phillips? We don't ever see him. We don't see anybody from the ACC in any representative measure, out in public, except for some articles from time to time out of Carolina media, and then we see them at the podium on championship events. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. And they're in the statements that Jim Phillips has come out with lately are not traditional words that come out of a commissioner's mouth in regards to the possible implosion of his conference. I mean, he's literally has said in the last few interviews that have been out in public, he said, if a couple schools go, we're going to be okay. We're going to be able, we've already backfilled for some of them. I'm paraphrasing it. So the times that he has spoke about it has been in a non-traditional, sort of a passive-aggressive stand, not a real strong stand that he's taken. Like he's almost anticipating a settlement. That's how I'm taking it.
Well, see, you brought up a point that I thank you for bringing it up, because I was going to bring it up. There was an article, and I know what you're referring to, because I think you had a show on it.
Yep.
But there's the acknowledgement teams are going to leave. He more or less acknowledged that it's going to happen, and there's not a lot of fight into keeping the conference together. One is, I've got a lot of opinions on the ACC leadership, and I don't know if it's that Jim is just weak, or that they have more or less given all real control of the conference over to ESPN. I don't know. I mean, Sankey is a strong commissioner, but he still has to not bow to ESPN, but he stands up for his conference and whatever else. But ESPN still holds the cards in a lot of their partnerships and so on, because ESPN, I think, what do they want to add? What is it, a 9th conference game or 9th or 10th conference game? And there's just the negotiations going back and forth between ESPN and the SEC. And, one won't cave to the other one's wishes or so on. So there's some back and forth. You don't get that out of the ACC. You don't get that at all. They bow to the wishes. At least the conference headquarters bows to the wishes of ESPN. They don't fight ESPN very much. So whenever I say, and I've said it in tweets and said it on here and other places, to me, ESPN, they may not own the grant of rights. They control it, because whatever they say goes. Now, so my opinion, it's going to be the negotiations that are happening aren't necessarily going to be FSU fighting the ACC. It's going to be FSU more or less negotiating with ESPN. Whatever the ESPN tells the ACC to do, the ACC is going to do it as long as ESPN honors the contract. And that's it. Because the contract is the meat of everything. If ESPN sat here, and we touched on it a little bit last night.
I agree with you. If ESPN honors the contract, and if there is security, long-term security, for a Wake Forest, for a Syracuse, for a Boston College, I agree with you, JD. I agree with you. Then ESPN's going to be able to, things are going to move on this.
So really,
Yeah.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
And that is why we said a month ago, we said we think there's an increased chance here that if an implosion happens earlier than anybody expects it, that the SEC is going to be able to eat first, second, possibly third or fourth before the Big Ten can get table scraps, because ESPN is going to play a part in this early implosion. But it's hard to say how it's going to go. Yeah, go ahead.
No, so what people have to consider is, if the ESPN contract is still in effect and ESPN still honors it, and FSU and Clemson, after FSU and Clemson or others leave, which they're not going to, they're going to renegotiate. They'll have to do something. But I'm just saying, there's no claims that the ACC has against FSU and Clemson for the GR. There would be no GR buyout because ESPN is still honoring the contract. Now, there's the ACC buyout. That's completely separate.
Yeah.
That's your conference buyout. Now, that's just – go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're making a good point. I'm sorry.
But the point is, ESPN's not going to honor that contract if your two biggest revenue sources or viewership sources leave the conference. Okay, they're just not going to, and which is going to cause some type of renegotiate. I know we could sit here and say, well, no, you have to make sure if you're what is it? The composition clause kicks in if you fall three members below the 15 or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to figure this. I'm trying to remember the specifics. But the point is ESPN's not going to honor the deal. They're going to renegotiate, which essentially voids the grant of rights anyway. But I think we could get into conspiracy theories and what'll happen this way and what'll happen that way. We're not going to know what the buyout is because they have to figure out what's going to be left of the ESPN ACC contract. And I think more of the grant of rights buyout, if there is one, that's going to be more for ESPN. If they're required to honor the deal, ESPN's going to want something from someone, or it's going to be more or less repackaged to suggest, hey, this is to shore up the ACC deal. Maybe that's what it's for. And what I'm saying is, it's just there's a misconception that everybody's like, oh, well, the ACC is going to get $400 or $500 million out of each one of these teams. That's not the way it's going to work. Now, there's going to be some money either from the schools, or if FSU and Clemson, per se, let's say they went to the Big Ten, ESPN, the ACC, however, they're going to get something for the grant of rights. They're going to get something for more or less selling their broadcast rights. However all that works. But I just don't think it's going to work out how people think it is. And it's going to get really confusing. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's I just don't believe it's going to be this $400, $500, $600 million deals. I think it's going to be selling assets or negotiating assets, or in future playoff. ESPN's and Fox and a lot of the other networks are, heading into acquire future playoff rounds and games and so on. There's just a lot that's going to go on between the networks, and I think that's how the grant of rights is going to get worked out.
Okay.
And I could tell you my opinion on how it's going to happen will change tomorrow, but it's just not.
Well, none of us know. I can guarantee you that. And Florida State,
yes, sir.
Maybe Florida State's starting to firm up their plans on how they're going to attack this. But I think we can speculate pretty accurately on the fact that if ESPN is going to play a major role in this, if they're okay with some shuffling of the assets, if they're okay with, damaging their own ACC network that they've invested millions of dollars into by having the big brands of the ACC schools move to the SEC. If ESPN becomes in favor of all this, I think we can accurately say, as of tonight, Tuesday, December 19th, ESPN is not on board. I mean, if they take an active participation, if they are active participants of the ACC implosion, if they make it easier for Florida State and for Clemson, they're not doing it right now. I can tell you that. So, but that could become part of the story. But it's not happening right now.
And that's something I don't know, because we got a couple of insiders that suggest certain things.
Okay, I should say that I know. Well, whatever. Yeah, it's just.
Yeah, well, we've got one that suggests that ESPN might be willing to let the ACC die to move around some of their assets.
Of course, I'm not.
But that was also months ago. There's a lot that's changed since then, so I don't know. I think there's a lot of things being floated around there at the network level. Now, I do know that, and this is from 2 to 3 different places, that whether it's through intermediaries or directly or whatever, either FSU officials or some of their representatives that they've hired spent a lot of time in Chicago. They've spent a lot of time in Chicago the last couple of years.
Okay.
That's just what has been said. So this dealing, or let's just say negotiations or extended conversations with the networks associated with the Big Ten, that hasn't just started. That's it's been pretty in depth, and I've heard that from at least 4. Some of them aren't like confidential sources. I mean, most of it's just out in the open. But it's more or less just inside the FSU, circles and so on. But and who knows? And again, I lean that it's going to happen where FSU's going to the Big Ten, but the SEC might cave and offer full shares. I mean, because that was the rumor going around a few weeks ago, or maybe even a month ago, and I don't know how accurate it is, but I haven't heard anybody rebuff it. That the deal was the SEC was offering significantly reduced shares for like a 5 to 6 year period. And if that was the offer that was on the table, I think FSU was, turning that down. And then just coincidentally, shortly after I heard that, the next thing you know, the ESPN campaign started, to exclude FSU out of the playoff. So, it could all just been timing. Those are the things that you just don't know. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, all that's just
All righty, man.
Theories. But anyway, all right, I appreciate the time.
I appreciate it, JD, Mr. Seminole, PATC. JD, thanks for calling, man. Appreciate it.
Have a great night. Thanks. All right, bye-bye.
Yeah, I'm gonna reiterate what I said about the timing of ESPN here. Canes, all day, thank you for your incredible generosity to this channel, helping us keep the lights on. Thank you, Canes, all day, for your super chat, for your participation in the PATC chat room. And, whoops, I'm sorry, John Teal. I apologize. What's the chance of Washington State, Oregon State get in at the buzzer? When it comes to the Big 12, I don't think so. Can they buy their way into the ACC? Eventually, maybe, but I don't think so. Not right now. I think they're going to end up in the Mountain West, like we said on day one after the Pac-12 implosion. We don't believe the Big 12 is interested at all. If you're talking about the ACC, maybe sometime down here, down the road, maybe Washington State and Oregon State can get in through the back door, an SMU type of situation. We do not believe at all here at Peek Around the Corner about any talks about a merger between the Big 12 and the ACC. It makes no sense. None. Zero. I know a lot of that's been out there on X, formerly known as Twitter, which gets down to the message boards, which gets to my DMs. We just don't believe any of that is going on. There's so much other stuff going on. That is not going on. Anyways, thank you, John, for your generosity. Thank you, Canes All Day College Football Playoff Edits. Great show, Greg. Keep up the great work. This is by far the best show for realignment on YouTube. Thank you so very much. We just did a live show a couple nights ago talking about the crazy, way too early, crazy 12-team playoff predictions that we made. I love that show. It was a lot of fun. We're going to do it again in a couple months. We're going to keep doing our way too early predictions on what the 12-team playoffs are going to look like. It's a great exercise to go through that because you come to okay, these are the quarterbacks, the running backs, the defense, who's returning. The more and more we talk about our predictions for the 12-team playoffs, we get deeper and deeper dives into each school. And anyways, we're going to be doing that again. We're going to be doing that. That was a lot of fun a couple nights ago. Yesterday we did a live show that is connected to the hip to this live show. If you missed our live show yesterday, Clemson is active. That's what I want to get to about. This is what I want to talk about when it comes to ESPN's timing on this. We reported it to you yesterday. The leaks from the media companies are happening. And I can say it. I don't write for a media company. I don't write articles. I don't do podcasts for a conference. I'm not locked down Big Ten. Tony, I'm not locked down Big Ten. I saw 2 minutes. I'm not trying to throw rocks or anything, but I saw lockdown Big Ten for 2 minutes on their interpretation of Big Ten expansion and everything. Yeah, there are no strings attached here. The leaks are just like the Colorado situation, just like the Oregon-Washington situation, when we reported to you all that in the next 5 months or 5 years from now, Washington and Oregon were going to become Big Ten schools because Fox Sports was banging the drums for it. And when the commissioner left, when Kevin Warren left, that was the biggest hurdle for further Big Ten expansion. All that the Big Ten needed, according to the legal counsel, was for the Big 12 to be able to crack into the Pac-12 a couple times. And they did that. And it went exactly like we reported to you. Because Fox Sports, the leaks, the interest in Oregon, in Washington from the Big Ten leaked from a media company. The interest, Clemson and Florida State know that they have interest in both of them from both conferences due to leaks from media companies, plus some other stuff that's going on, money purchase and stuff. And of course, North Carolina as well. But I'm just trying to So when we did our show yesterday, I said this. The chatter is very strong, very high, very loud. So then when this came out tonight, the first thing I did, first of all, I said to the little general, little general, I said, Mireya, got to do a live show, emergency live show. But I smiled. I had a big old smile on my face because Florida State having in-depth discussions right now. Yeah. And you know what? Their in-depth discussions it isn't just Peter Collins calling another board member, calling the athletic director, calling Richard McCullough, Michael Alford, Mike Norvell, probably not him, not right now. He's too busy. But this isn't in-depth discussions, reignited in-depth discussions. This is them talking to a third party. This is them possibly picking up the phone again with a possible investment firm. This is them talking about a former employee that used to work at a media company that has a connection with somebody who's still working at that media company, making sure that what they perceived as their value is correct. This is in-depth discussions. This is the activity that's happening. And then when this activity swirls just strong enough, then somebody comes out with an article. Do you think? Let me ask you this. Let me ask you, because this is all important. I know a lot of you are thinking, the fat guy from Minnesota, his cheese has slipped off his cracker once again tonight. And that's probably the case. Do you think that Florida State, that Peter Collins or Mike Alford or Richard McCullough, do you think one of them thought that they could gain advantage on this by leaking this to Pete Thamel and ESPN? Do you think ESPN sources were just Florida State? Or did ESPN find out about this and then called their Florida State sources? I would go with the latter versus the former. In other words, if I had a bet on it and it would just be speculation, kind of, I'll just call it speculation. Yeah, I'll call it speculation because I really don't know. But we have an educated speculation on this, that ESPN found out about this from sources, their friends, from other media companies. Because these talks are happening. Not official talks. Nothing official. Allegedly, these talks, third-party talks, are happening. Helmer Anderson, thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you for your generosity. Coming back into the chat room, I appreciate it. Percentage to Big Ten for Florida State and Miami. Big market plus recruiting. Your rendition of the victors show you are no Wolverine, not to be sung sweetly. You know what? I'm going to sing that song again. Next time I'm going to do it without my headphones on. And I'm going to do a lot better. Okay, Mr. Henderson? I'm going to do it a lot better next time. When Michigan defeats Alabama, I'm going to be singing that song post-game, here, watch party, peek around the corner, and I'm going to be on tune. All right? That's my guarantee from me to you. Percentage to Big Ten for Florida State and Miami. Again, I don't really want to speculate on that. I'm going to let you guys speculate on it. Because one, my when I speculate on something, then I see it as reported. Like Greg says this. Peek Around the Corner says this. It's and this is not a cop-out. And I want to answer your question, Helmer. I want to, but I can't. Because there's so many variables to this. How much control ESPN will have. North Carolina, Virginia, they have their own galaxy in this big story that is very complicated. And all that, I think, still affects Florida State and Miami of Florida and what happens to them, plus Clemson. I would say that Miami's percentage to go to the Big Ten is probably higher than Florida State, even though I would consider Florida State a higher target for the Big Ten, because I don't think the SEC has any interest in Miami, but I know there are people who have said differently. Those people haven't talked to me. The people that I've talked to don't really believe Miami, Florida has a spot in the SEC, unless everything goes pear-shaped for the SEC. And even at that point, I'm not sure that Miami, Florida has a spot. So I can tell you that Florida State has interest, of course, from both. Clemson has interest from both. Miami of Florida has interest from the Big Ten. That's the best way I can answer that question. And again, the next time I do next time I do the rendition of Victor's, I'm going to sing it on tune. I promise you that. Thank you so much for your super chat. I appreciate it so very much. Okay. Helmer Henderson, thank you again for the super chat. If the Big Ten hockey desperately needs another member, why not a hockey-only team like North Dakota Sioux? Great question. Thank you for the super chat. The Big Ten hockey doesn't desperately need another member. It has 7, and that is horrible for hockey scheduling. It's terrible to have an odd number schools in a conference, the way you schedule hockey. I believe if you go check all the other conferences, NCAA Division I hockey conferences, they all have even numbers, or they have a plan to get to an even number of school. So it is horrible to have odd number. But the Big Ten has had odd number since Notre Dame joined the conference. When it comes to the University of North Dakota Sioux, now I haven't talked about this on PATC. I talked about it at Minnesota 247. The Big Ten and North Dakota 2 times since 2017 has had some discussions. One in 2017 and the other time in 2019. I reported on it in Minnesota 247. It was also reported on it about a month later after I reported on it from Patrick Royce at the Minneapolis Star and Tribune. One of the interesting aspects to it is we have an unusual source on that story. One that I'm going to be able to talk about at a certain time. I said this back in 2019. It's been 5 years, 4 years, soon to be 5 years. And I'm still going to be able to talk about this story. I can't right now, but there's going to come a certain time. I've been given the okay when I can talk about some of the talks between North Dakota and Minnesota, and nobody else has the story. I know that sounds crazy, but there's a certain source that is very close to me when it comes like the family. We're going to be able to talk about it. But anyways, I do not anticipate, after saying all of that, after saying that they had a little bit of conversations in 2017, 2019, I do not anticipate North Dakota to become the 8th member of the men's Big Ten Hockey Conference. I don't think it's going to happen. Don't think it's going to happen. One of the reasons why, well, COVID in 2020 basically shut the door down on any possibility of it happening. It really kind of reframed the question to the Big Ten in regards to, when we bring on affiliate members, they really need to have commonality with a Big Ten institution. That's the only way I can put it. I don't want to go too deep dive into it, but it's not going to be. North Dakota Sioux. As you know, if at this point, if the Big Ten Men's Hockey Conference adds an 8th school here in the next year, I would be shocked because I haven't heard any talks, no serious talks about an imminent adding of an 8th school. And I couldn't even give you a candidate right now, to be honest with you. Because I don't believe Boston College and Boston University wants to leave Hockey East. If they wanted to leave to join the Big Ten Men's Hockey Conference, then I think the Big Ten would listen. Boston U and Boston College. Beyond that, I don't think there's a candidate out there. Okay, hopefully that answers your question. Richard L. Greg, are you doing a show tomorrow for early signing day? Maybe. That's the best answer I can give you. So keep your head on a swivel. Keep your head on a swivel. Maybe. If I do one, it's going to be early in the morning. Early in the morning. Because the problem is, and I keep going back and forth, is the problem is there is so much going on at early signing day. To cover one school on early signing day is a difficult task. To cover a conference is an impossible task. To cover the whole college football landscape, it would be like, I keep battling back and forth, Richard. That's why I kind of pause when you ask the question. We shall see. Thank you for the super chat. I'm sorry I don't have a good answer for you, Mr. Buffalo. Appreciate the super chat. Richard Ellis is Denver University. Tony, Greg, I agree. Boston College, Boston, you are not leaving the Hockey East. Anthony Carlson. So basically the Big Ten hockey is stuck member-wise for right now. I'm still if you go back to episode 52, now we just did episode 345 today. If you've missed it, go check it out. On episode 52, we talked about Oregon. We talked about the money perch. They were going to look into moving up their HCHA club hockey team to NCAA Division I in the next decade if they were going to get into the Big Ten Conference. So we're still kind of, we're poking and prodding still on that potential story. One of the major problems is, of course, House versus NCAA. These schools are going to be owing millions and millions of dollars. These conferences are going to be owing tens of millions of dollars. So it's going to be difficult to build a Division I hockey program and an autonomy for a conference school right now. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I also want to get to We're still working on a story for early peak episode for members only. I'm still trying to confirm one more item. We've dropped 10 of these. These are early peak episodes for early peak members only. We have one level of membership. If you're interested in obtaining the ability to watch Cloak and Dagger early peak episodes, those are the episodes where we first drop a little bit of nugget of information. Hit the join button. Hit the join button if you're interested. I thought we were going to drop one yesterday morning. This morning, I knew right away where we were not going to drop an episode. We're shooting for tomorrow morning. We're working on a story. We're trying to confirm something. It has to do with Conference USA. But anyways, if you're interested in getting the early peak, becoming an early peak member, hit the join button. Okay, and there was a question here. Don Scruggs, why can't football just break away from other sports? Maybe it can, but it's going to be a lot more difficult than... For example, Georgia, right? Georgia. Take Georgia. Would Georgia's would they really want their basketball team or their baseball team to be playing in a different conference other than the SEC? The answer is probably no. So why... Football is the revenue maker, right? The most revenue, of course, football. They're the ones that drive the bus. But these conferences are a lot more intertwined than just football. It really is. There's, like Chip Kelly of UCLA, the head coach of UCLA, says, why can't we just become a 64 football team league and then have our softball team play Arizona? Well, after you're in the Big Ten for 10 years, your other sport teams are going to be intertwined with the Big Ten. You're going to want to be a part of the Big Ten network. There's value in that. Way over. It's a lot more complicated than just saying football here and all the other sports here. It just is. I mean, there are some universities that share an athletic village, for example, like University of Minnesota. It's football in all sports. Then you have sponsorships all over the walls, and it's just way more complicated than people sometimes suggest it is. Could it happen at some point? Sure. I don't think it's going to be happening anytime soon. I'm trying to give the best peek around the corner I can, but I don't think football is going to be separating from the other sports anytime soon. T5 Terps, I don't buy the SEC in Virginia. Just doesn't fit. Virginia is a Big Ten mold, but needs a heavy lifter. North Carolina, Florida State, Notre Dame. They're also going to have to find a way, D5 Terps, to dislodge themselves away from Virginia Tech. If you're new to the show, please subscribe to the channel. Get yourself notified. We can come on live anytime. Tonight was an emergency live show. If you subscribe, if you're notified, you'll be notified that we're coming on. PATC Breaking News, ESPN. Sources, Florida State discussing future in ACC after the college football playoff snub. Andrea Adelson, Pete Thamel reporting ESPN. Florida State has had renewed in-depth discussions about its long-term future in the ACC in recent weeks. Sources tell ESPN. And I believe, just my speculation, I believe the sources did not all come from Florida State. I think it came from other media companies. Again, that's just my speculation. The situation is expected to come to a head in the near future and formally discussed soon. Sources indicated to ESPN, while there has been renewed discussion, no Board of Trustees meeting has been called. So the situation is expected to come to a head in the near future, and we believe, here at Peek Around the Corner, we believe that means some sort of declaration, some sort of statement to how to push this story forward. Florida State is going to make a clear pathway. They're going to make a statement in the first quarter of 2024. So, and then they talked about in the article a formal discussion. Formal as in the Board of Trustees. Peter Collins, the head of the Board of Trustees at Florida State. Formal discussion. I think it would be very difficult for that to happen before the end of the calendar year. So it's probably going to happen in January, right? And we're not going to count that as this big event happening in the first quarter of 2024 as we first reported December 26, 2022. That's not it. A formal discussion from the Board of Trustees, that's not it. That's not the big thing that's going to happen. It's going to be huge. It's going to be important. That formal discussion, trying to tie down what exactly are they going to declare. A lot of it's going to be in private. Probably some's going to be in public. The Florida State Board of Trustees, you saw what they did in public last time in the summer. But there's going to be something else. There's going to be something else. The Florida State Money Perch has told us, and 358 days ago, this was always going to be the stand. This was always going to be the time that Florida State put their spear into the ground. January, February, March, first quarter 2024. And what exactly do they say? What do they decide on? What type of timeline? What time of attack do they put on the ACC? We do not know, but we are poking and prodding in this story, as you know. That's why we've been concentrating on this in the Money Perch, in the Holy Smokes Theater with the Money Perch. Yesterday, live show, Clemson is active. Clemson is active. And we said yesterday in the live show, Clemson is active right with Florida State. And sure enough, the next day, the next evening, we get this article, breaking news from Florida State. Helmer Henderson, thank you for the super chat once again for your incredible generosity. Is Virginia and Virginia Tech together a money loser? Very good question. Obviously, the value of the University of Virginia for any conference, Big Ten or the SEC, would go down if they had Virginia Tech take along. And that's not a shot against Virginia Tech. Together, are they a money loser? Short term, yeah. Long term, I don't know. That's a great question. And that is, Now we don't have any information on this, but we know that Florida State and Clemson has done a lot of work, and North Carolina. We've had those holy smoke theater updates. But we don't have any information on this. We're going to try. We'll do what we can. But if Virginia has done the work, like North Carolina, Clemson, and Florida State, in regards to third-party talks, indirect talks, trying to get the lay of the land, trying to get information from where they sit when it comes to valuation with the media companies, being in the SEC or the Big Ten in the future, if they've done the work, and what type of feedback did they get? Have they gotten feedback that says, you alone, Virginia, yeah, we can make it work. This could be it. This could possibly work. With you and Virginia Tech, what's the feedback on that? I would have to think that they have done the work on it. Both schools were part of the Magnificent Seven. The 7 schools that got together in secret. And one of the missions that those 7 schools were on was to see what type of path forward would it take for the 7 schools to form their own separate conference. And part of that was an evaluation of what type of media deal they could get if they could get out of the Gore. Those 7 schools did that in secret. A cabal. Well, they've been doing it separately for months. Third-party talks, indirect talks with media companies. But they did it together. So Virginia Tech together, a money loser. For the SEC, Big Ten, they would have to come in as a discount. They're going to have to see how the dominoes fall before them, because there's quite a bit of schools between them and the top domino. I would say it'd be very, very difficult for them not to be a money loser together. That's my answer. It'd be very difficult not to see them as a money loser. It's a very difficult situation. And I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen big articles being written about it. I think we're going to see it here real soon. But I've already thought we would see it, because we were told, and I don't know if you were, Helmer, if you watched the live show that we did about Virginia Tech, but we were told by a Virginia money perch, not a Hokie money perch, not a Virginia Tech money perch, a Virginia money perch, that it would be almost impossible for Virginia to dislodge themselves from Virginia Tech. Politically, they're more intertwined than ever before. It's going to be very difficult. And we were told it's not just the Attorney General of the state. There are other politicians that will make it basically impossible for Virginia to move without Virginia Tech. So it's a great question, Helmer. One I do not have an answer for. But I would bet it would be a money loser, but maybe still worthwhile for the SEC and the Big Ten, depending on other variables that we don't know. And now Mark Warner, Anthony Carlson, the AG Mark Warner was the governor of Virginia at the time Virginia Tech joined the ACC. He wants both schools to be treated the same. Mark Warner is a senator, right? The Attorney General, I can't come up with the name right now, but he is Mr. Sports, loves sports. he's come out in public and said that they're going to be treated the same, or neither of them are going to be going out of the ACC. But we were told specifically, it's not just him. In Virginia, in the state of Virginia politics, it's not just the Attorney General. It's way more than just him. JD Turtle, Big Ten Network, will be reporting on the Big Ten early signing day. They do a pretty good job. And as we reported yesterday, JD Turtle, let me see if I have that up here. Oregon's Dan Lanning, USC's Lincoln Riley, Washington's Kalen DeBoer will join the Big Ten Network's Big Ten Live Signing Day special tomorrow, Wednesday. So you're going to see Oregon's head coach, USC's head coach, Washington's head coach on the Big Ten Network. So, like Matt Fortuna said here, reality is setting in. The Oregon Duck fans, if you want to see your team being talked about when it comes to signing day, put on the Big Ten Network. Put on the Big Ten Network tomorrow morning. Hummus Hero, what is the breaking news? The breaking news, we just went through it again. Florida State, tonight, Andrea Adelson and Pete Thamel, sources, Florida State discussing future in ACC after the college football playoff snub. Florida State has had renewed in-depth discussions about its long-term future in the ACC in recent weeks. Sources tell ESPN the situation is expected to come to a head in the near future and formally discussed soon. Sources indicated to ESPN, while there has been renewed discussion, no Board of Trustees meeting has been called. We believe at Peek Around the Corner, when it says situation is expected to come to a head in the near future, we believe that has to do with some sort of statement from Florida State first quarter 2024 in regards what they're going to do next.
Call from
Steve.
Steve, Mr. Bearcat, the floor is yours. How you doing, sir?
Good. How are you, Greg?
Doing good. Doing good.
Good.
ESPN
Look.
putting out some information.
I guess so. A little too chilly in Florida for me tonight, my friend. This is kind of crazy stuff for December. It's supposed to be down in the 40s.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyhow, you briefly mentioned your mark. What? And I know this is a difficult question, maybe. What's gone through his head right now as all this is transpiring, and he doesn't have, obviously much control, if any control over it, like the demise of the pack. But what's he setting back looking for, Greg? I guess is the easiest way to put it. When this all comes, the Big Ten, SEC get who they want. What's he looking at?
I think, first of all, he's thinking, thank goodness that I've got Fox and ESPN as my media partners. That's number one. Because he can, he's going to be able to work with both here to get table scraps. I think that's what he's thinking. I don't think he's talking with the ACC at all. I know there's a lot of talk about that out there in X on Twitter and message boards. I don't think he's having any discussions with them. There's no reason for him to do it. And I think Tony Petitti and Brett Yormark are probably thinking the same way and sitting back and going, okay, if this implosion happens if it makes it so some of these schools will be able to leave the ACC, have to climb up a big high mountain, but if one or more are able to do it in the next 3 years, how much control will ESPN be involved with? Like, how much of it is going to be controlled implosion? How much of it's going to be an uncontrolled implosion? Because if it's an uncontrolled implosion, then Brett Yormark and Tony Petitti may have some room, some space to get bigger value than maybe they believe that they could. But if it's a controlled implosion, if ESPN is playing a big hand, then Tony Petitti and Brett Yormark are going to have a whole lot less ability. You know, they're going to have to basically wait to see what remains for them. Right?
Okay, yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's just a matter of, could there possibly be, in 2 or 3 years, 10 teams leaving the ACC? Because then that gets the SEC, the Big Ten, and the Big 12 all to 20.
Yeah, obviously there's a possibility of that. Yep, we've had that discussion, and I think you're there is a possibility of that, no question about it. I don't know how much, but yes.
Okay.
Like, I don't know, to be honest with you, like after, let's just pretend 4 schools go to the SEC and 2 go to the Big Ten, right? Like what you and I were talking last time. What does ESPN and, like, what will ESPN say to Brett Yormark? Like, will ESPN be in favor of 2 of them going to the Big 12 or 4 of them? Like, because at some point the SEC, at some point ESPN is going to want to protect their investment in the ACC, right? Like, I don't know if the Big 12 would be able to get 4. They might only be able to get 2, right? Or 0. I don't know. I think they have the advantage. I think they can get some. But to answer your question, I think, yes, it's a possibility that 10 would leave.
Here's kind of the scenario I look at too, Greg, is if 10 leave, 2 of them are going to the Big Ten, which is Fox, CBS, NBC, okay? 8 of them are still going to be properties of ESPN.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
With the SEC and the Big 12, where you wonder, and again, it comes back to if that scenario does come about, what happens to the ACC if they have to backfill with G5 teams? What's going to happen if ESPN comes in and says, hey, we've got this clause that says, again, we've talked about this, we've got this clause that says we can renegotiate this TV contract. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Nope. Yep. And JD's talked about that as well. Yep.
So I see the scenario of, and what I DM'd you either this morning or last night, I can't remember, day in, day out, about the numbers on the ACC viewership, and they had now Nielsen the ACC network isn't registered on Nielsen, but this guy had ACC network numbers in there. Did you notice that when I DM'd you yesterday with that list? And I don't know how he came up with those numbers. because there's no measurement for the ACC network.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
He had that included in there where it was Florida State by a wide margin viewership, and then next was Louisville. And Louisville obviously got a bump from playing Florida State on, in the conference championship. But I went back further and looked at Sports Media Watch and some other sites that Louisville's always in the top 3 or 4 or 5, Greg, for viewership, always. And they're never talked about. And I guess probably the reason they're not talked about is Kentucky would tell the SEC, no, don't bring these guys in here with us. And I would think Ohio State, Purdue, and Indiana would tell the Big Ten, nah, their proximity, no, we don't want them. So that's why, I think they're a great fit for the Big 12.
Oh, yeah. The Big 12 would run and open that door as fast as they could. And I believe that. I believe that with Louisville. I believe that with Pittsburgh. And, of course, if Miami, Florida was available, that as well. And then I think sometimes we forget about if this ACC implosion happens.
If you don't think Yormark wouldn't like to plant a flag right in the middle of downtown Atlanta with Georgia Tech, you're crazy too, because he would.
Yeah.
He's that guy.
Yeah.
I just think he's that guy that would say, "Oh, Georgia Tech's hanging
just
around."
That ESPN would have to say, yeah, well,
yeah, I understand. I can see with all the government coalition, I don't know, coalition's the right word, all the government with North Carolina State, Virginia Tech, and then you have obviously Clemson, Florida State. I can see I can see Miami not going to the SEC or the Big Ten, Greg. I really can.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that too far-fetched?
No, it's not too far-fetched. Nope. I think there's very little or no chance that Miami, Florida is going to end up in the SEC, as we've discussed in the past. I do think there's a chance for them to end up in the Big Ten. I do not think you can eliminate the possibilities of Miami, Florida being there for the Big 12. Now, what are the odds? What are the chances? I don't know. There's so much to this, as you know, Steve. But I don't think you can eliminate it. I don't think there's any way you can eliminate that potentiality.
Yeah, I just, as I hear you speak and I read things and so forth, I think this Virginia Tech, North Carolina State, North Carolina thing is stronger than people may realize, and maybe it comes out that, one goes to the SEC, one goes to the Big Ten, and then the one that's making the most money pays the difference back to make them equal. You know what I'm saying, Greg? Yeah. The one that goes to the Big Ten pays the team that goes to the SEC, so they both make equal revenue. I could see a situation like that happening, sort of like the UCLA California thing, somewhat. But it's just, excuse me. I'm just thinking by the. You're going to think I'm crazy. By the start of the 25 football season, everybody's going to be where they want them to be and where the networks want them to be and where the conferences want them to be. I really believe that.
Okay. Well, I don't think you're crazy, Steve. At least I don't think you're any more crazy than I am. But I think that might be a little too early. But again, you could be right, and I do not think you're crazy.
I just, Greg, after what happened, your mark letting Texas and Oklahoma go a year early.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot less complicated, though. But
I know.
Yeah.
But it's still, whether you leave 2 teams go early or 4 teams go early, you're letting people go early.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah. And it's like if I'm the networks, and I've told you this before, and I go into negotiations for billions of dollars for the playoffs, I would like everything to be as settled down as it could possibly be. I would like to tell my conference partners, if I'm ESPN, get your ducks in a row here, guys, so, we really know what's gone on. Are the, who's where and so forth. I know you're basically negotiating on the whole ball of wax, but it would make a difference if certain teams were in the Big 10 and Big 12 and SEC, and then you have the ACC there, who still may be an autonomous 5. I think that changes things when you come down to the money. I really do. I really think and nothing against any of these schools that may get left there or may get backfilled there, but they would be what the AAC is now, to me, money-wise.
Yeah.
Is that, I really believe that.
Mm-hmm.
But we shall see.
Yeah.
We shall see. All right, Greg, I'm watching one of the minor bowl games again.
All right.
I can't.
Okay.
So.
All right. Appreciate the call, Steve.
Yep. Thanks,
Mr.
man.
Bearcat.
Have a good evening.
You got it. Couple super chats. Helmer Hennison. Head coaches are fired on expected results. So they should be allowed to go in a battle with the coaches they want. Nepotism shouldn't be a problem. If it goes badly, fire the head coach. Great comment. Interesting comment. They should be able to go into battle who they want, but nepotism can cause some issues because some people, even the perception that somebody is being judged differently than the rest of the staff. Even if he isn't being judged differently, the perception that he could be can cause problems among the staff. And of course, if Iowa is a big example of it. Coach Kirk Ferentz, his son Brian Ferentz, great offensive line coach, comes to be an offensive coordinator, and Iowa's offense has been terrible. And if the athletic director would not have stepped in, Brian Ferentz would still be the offensive coordinator going into next year. Yes, Iowa has won a bunch of games. But man, the offense has not helped them. Nepotism, let me put it this way. Nepotism is dangerous. Very, very dangerous. But on the other hand, if I was an athletic director and if I had a head coach, successful head coach, I would give him free reins on who to hire, and I would not have nepotism. I would not have that be a barrier. As long as the staff can pass basic background tests, right? I would give the coach free rein. However, then it happens to be results, wins and losses. The results of the offensive coordinator, again, the example of Iowa, it was bad. And it was bad for a number of years. And I think Beth Gates, the interim, I believe she's still the interim, I'm not sure, of Iowa. I think she made the right call. They have to go into a different direction at Iowa. Thank you so much for the super chat, Mr. Henderson. Appreciate it. Tough Tony. Big Ten media partners want Florida State and Clemson. That's where the eyeballs are. Conference realignment is about making money. It's about making money. It's about increasing exposure. It also can be much about, research, academics. And in the case of, like, let's say a Florida State and Clemson, or even a North Carolina, even a Virginia, but for your example, Tony, it's also be about demographics. Getting into a market where you're not at. Expanding the brand of the Big Ten Conference. But the demographics, the student athletes in a particular part of the country, that's also part of it as well. But overall, it all boils down to money, 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 exposure, 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 which increases your money. Thank you so much for the super chat, Tony. Appreciate it so very much. Yep. He was a great offensive line coach. Absolutely. Okay, we're going to shut it down for the night. We've been on the air for 2 hours. It was an emergency live show because of the breaking news. Florida State has had in-depth discussions, reignitement of their in-depth discussions along the lines of what are they going to do? What is their future in the ACC? We've been talking about this story since April 26, 2022. First quarter of 2024 is almost upon us. So buckle up, brace for impact. The chatter is very loud, and you just saw the result of it. ESPN broke this news tonight because there's a lot of chatter behind the curtain. And we're going to continue to report to you, give you a peek around the corner in the world of college football. Just like we did when we broke the story of USC called the Big Ten. We broke it March 31st, 2022. We broke it all on the Colorado story. We told you about Oregon and Washington. Now the ACC, the Holy Smokes Theater. This has so many different layers to it. It's going to be complicated. It's going to be long. It's already been long, but it's still a long road. So stick with us here at Peek Around the Corner. If you're new to the channel, if you liked our content tonight, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Get yourself notified. Hit the notification bell because we could come up live at any time. I want to thank you for the great comments, for the great phone calls, for more membership in the early peak membership. Thank you so very, very much. I appreciate it. The great comments, the support you all given us. Awesome clips. I will talk to you about that offline. I appreciate the super chat. Greg, if you can, lower the cost of membership level from $5.99 to $4.99. I've thought about it. We're going to work on that, but I'll talk to you offline on that. Thank you. Awesome clips. We do want to make sure there's the ability to give gift memberships on this channel. We want to have that happen. So we're looking into it. We're trying to figure out a second level of membership here at Peek Around the Corner. But anyways, we want to thank you all. Thank you so much for the super chat. Awesome clips. Appreciate it, Mr. Louisville Cardinal. I want to thank you all for joining us on this live emergency show that we had to do tonight. Wow. ESPN. Why did they break this news tonight? It's because it's leaking, just like we told you last night on the live show. Leaking from media companies. Until next time, from all of us at PATC to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.